Hello friends, this is the 11Six24 Monarch line. This wide-body series comes in three varieties ranging from power-oriented to control-oriented and ranging in price from $150 down to $100. For the price and performance, the Monarch just might be the best paddle series released yet in 2024. Let's get into it. First, a disclosure. 11Six24 sent me these paddles to test for a potential review with no obligations. No money changed hands, and 11Six24 did not have any input on this video's production or get to preview it before it was published. I've never taken payment for any review, including this one. But if you use my affiliate code to purchase one of these paddles, you get a discount and I get a commission. And that's how all this works. The Monarch series comes in three models: the All-Quart, Control, and Jelly Bean. The prices are $140 for the All-Quart, $150 for the Control, and $100 for the Jelly Bean. And you can take 10% off with the code JOHNQ. They're all the same shape, so a wide-body paddle measuring 15.8 inches long by 8.2 inches wide with a 5.75-inch long handle, which is plenty of room for two-handed backhands and gives the paddle more leverage for increased power. So what differentiates each paddle in this series are the construction techniques and materials. Both the All-Quart and Control are Gen 2 thermoformed paddles, so they're assembled in a mold with a unibody design and edge foam, and then heat and pressure are applied to cure everything together. And the Jelly Bean is a Gen 1.5 paddle, which is constructed with cold layering with the addition of edge foam. The materials are also different in each of these models. The All-Quart is a unidirectional raw carbon fiber surface, and the layup combines two layers of carbon fiber with a layer of fiberglass. The fiberglass gives this paddle a little bit of extra firepower, which we'll get into later. The Control has three layers of unidirectional carbon fiber, but the top layer is a Kevlar twill weave. This type of Kevlar facing gives the paddle a bit more of a muted response and helps with control. And the Jelly Bean has two layers of unidirectional carbon fiber and one layer of fiberglass, same as the All-Quart, but the Jelly Bean is a Gen 1 layup that doesn't have the unibody design and isn't thermoformed, so it feels much softer and leans more control than both of the other paddles. The Jelly Bean does have edge foam though, making it a Gen 1.5 and giving it a great sweet spot. I ran my usual testing protocol on this paddle, capturing ball spin and speed with a Doppler radar signature and taking measurements of swing weight, twist weight, and balance point, and then combining these data into various indices to help clarify aspects of the paddle's performance. Let's start with the All-Quart. The boxes at the top of this graphic give you the raw numbers, and the radar chart on the bottom shows where these numbers fall in terms of percentiles for over 200 paddles in my database. High values over on the left side of the chart indicate more firepower, and high values on the top right of the chart relate to the paddle's control and forgiveness. Finally, the bottom of the chart tells you about maneuverability and hand speed. You can see that the radar chart is heavy on the power, spin, and twist weight indices, and lighter on pop, swing weight, and balance point. So with full swings like serves and drives, this paddle generates a good amount of power. Pop is more muted, falling at the 41st percentile, so shorter strokes like punch volleys, flicks, and even dinks don't come off the paddle as fast as other paddles with higher pop scores. The stacked percentiles on the upper right side of the chart indicate good control, both in terms of spin, which helps you shape the ball, and with twist weight, which correlates with the size of the sweet spot. And the low values along the bottom of the chart indicate really good hand speed and maneuverability. So this is a fingerprint of a paddle with good hand speed, good control, and some offensive options with bigger swings. Now let's compare the same radar charts for the control and the Jelly Bean. You can see that the chart for the control paddle has slightly less power and spin and slightly more pop than the all court. The spin is nearly the same, and the values for swing weight and balance point are even a bit lower than the all court, making the control paddle slightly more maneuverable. This is a fingerprint of a paddle with good control, excellent hand speed, less power, but still some offensive options, especially at the kitchen with shorter strokes like punch volleys and counters. And the Jelly Bean on the right is much lower for power and pop, but has great spin and a similar twist weight. So the Jelly Bean skews heavily into the control realm. Combining power and pop into a metric called firepower, you can see that the all-court paddle gets the most firepower of the three, with the control model not far behind, and the Jelly Bean much lower. Compared to other paddles on the market, the firepower of the all-court is most similar to the Honolulu J3K Pro, Rhombus Pulsar FX.R2, and Pickle Vantage Pro. The firepower of the control model is most similar to the Gamma Obsidian, Proton Series 1 Type B, and the Bread and Butter Fat Boy. Finally, the Jelly Bean's firepower compares to the Diadem Edge 18K, Gearbox G2 Integra, and Komodo Katana. Moving on to gameplay. My main takeaway when playing with these paddles side by side is that together they have the full range of what wide body paddles have to offer. All of them have oversized sweet spots and great spin, which translates to exceptional control. From there, you can decide if you want the more offensive options, which the all court and control provide, or the soft feel and exceptional control of the Jelly Bean. The difference between the all court and control models is subtle. The all court gets slightly more overall firepower, but the breakdown in power and pop for these paddles is different. The all court gets more velocity with full swings, and the control gets a bit more pop with shorter strokes like punch volleys and flicks. My personal favorite of the three is the all court. For my game style, it had the best balance between power and control, and I felt like the spin was more consistent than the control model across the full spectrum of shot making. So softer shots seem to generate more spin with the all court, and on the Jelly Bean for that matter, than the control model. Not that the control model had bad spin, it doesn't. It gets almost as good spin, but the differences are very subtle. With the all court, you can generate a surprising amount of power from the baseline with full swings, and this has always been an issue for me with standard and wide body paddles. On average, they play great at the kitchen, but power from the baseline leaves something to be desired. But something about the all court, probably helped by the layer of fiberglass in the surface layup, provides a generous amount of power. And all three paddles perform great at the kitchen during the soft game and during faster hand exchanges. The control paddle had more pop than the others, which was good for generating offense at the kitchen, but also comes with a bit of a trade-off for control because balls are easier to pop up. The all court was slightly better in that regard, and the Jelly Bean is a control machine. That's not to say that the control is bad on the control model. It's actually really good, but there are just subtle differences between it and the all court model. In terms of the feel of the ball off the face, this series goes from the Jelly Bean as the softest to the control in the middle, and finally to the all court with the stiffest feeling face. I did find that perimeter weighting improves these paddles. They all play great stock, but adding around 3 grams of tungsten to each side of the paddle, starting at the neck and going up the sides, does shore up some of the stability, which makes the sweet spot open up and feel even wider. It generates more plow through, and it adds a little bit of power. And all of these paddles start with such a light swing weight that you can add some tungsten without slowing down your hands much at all. One of my favorite trends this year has been the increase in wide body options. In the past, standard and wide body paddles were strictly control oriented with stubby little handles and not much in the way of innovation. But now with these three releases from 11Six24, I think that we have the most complete set of wide body options to date, with some of the best performance and definitely at the best price. They really nailed everything with the Monarch line. First, the overall shape is great, which has a long handle for two-handed shots and extra leverage that also helps with power. Also, the dimensions maximize the sweet spot, and the slight flare going up the face pushes the center of the sweet spot slightly up toward the head, which I think is important on a shorter paddle, especially for people transitioning from longer paddles. And the technology and materials put into these paddles are very smart. It gives you options on the spectrum from more power to all control. So the Jelly Bean falls squarely in the control category, and I'd call the All Court and Control Monarchs both all-court paddles, leaning power. I know the terminology is really confusing, and I honestly think the owner of 11Six24 likes to name his paddles the same categories that we paddle reviewers use just for laughs, and then throws in a name like Jelly Bean just to make things awkward. I get the Jelly Bean reference in the origin of the company name, and I'm only poking fun here because I know that the owner is a good sport and is also in on the joke. But man, 11Six24 has been on a tear lately, and their Monarch series is their best offering so far, in my opinion. And you really can't beat the prices. Using the code JohnQ at checkout drops the price of the Control to $135, the All Court to $126, and the Jelly Bean to $90, which is an absolute steal. If you've been curious about wide body paddles but haven't taken the plunge because the options so far haven't provided enough firepower, then the Monarch All Court and Control are both great options. And if you have a friend who's kind of new to pickleball and who's looking for their first premium paddle but doesn't want to pay an arm and a leg, or if you're a control player yourself looking for one of the best performing control paddles at the best price, then it's the Jelly Bean all day. Okay, that's it for now. As always, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.